Welcome back, everybody. Well, on September the 28th, 1988, Canada's Ben Johnson became the most celebrated athlete on the planet after winning the 100-meter sprint at the Seoul Olympics in a world record 9.79 seconds. Remember this?
차려.
They're away cleanly. Ben Johnson flying out of the block. Can Carl Lewis make up the deficit? Ben Johnson in the lead. Can he hang on? Yes, he's done it. Oh, magnificent.
All right, well, just 36 hours later, Johnson was stripped of his gold medal due to a positive drug test, making him one of the most controversial figures in sporting history. Now, for the first time, we have access to the whole story in a riveting expose titled World's Fastest Man. Please welcome journalist and author Mary Ormsby and the man himself, Ben Johnson.
Okay. We're so happy to have you both here.
Thank you so much.
Mary, why was it important for you to tell this story?
What happened to Ben in 1988 seemed to happen so quickly. It was like case closed. By the time he was disqualified, he was still in the air flying back to Canada when the Canadian government banned him for life from sport without even speaking to him. And from there, people just were kind of gobsmacked by what happened. Fast forward a couple of decades, Ben and I kept in touch, and I began to think about what was happening in that hearing in Seoul, where he had that critical time to defend himself. And so we started on an investigation, looking into how he was treated in Seoul, because he had a right to a fair hearing, regardless of what he had done. He had a right to a fair hearing as an athlete, as an Olympian, as a Canadian. And what we found in a nutshell was he was denied due process at that very critical moment in Seoul, and may have had a chance to have kept his gold medal had things unfolded differently. And that's the bulk of the book.
Wow.
All right, so Ben, let's go back a little bit, like from the beginning. Not the very beginning, but when you immigrated to Canada from Jamaica in 1976 with your 5 siblings and your mother, Gloria. When did you know that track and field was going to be your life here?
When I met Charlie Francis, the year after I came up, and I started running high school and track meets, and I met Charlie, I believed that this was my destiny to be in track and field and want to be the best, and also give something back to my mother, bring me up from a young child.
Wonderful.
And it was, you said, Charlie Francis who ultimately introduced you and a lot of other athletes to the idea of taking steroids. So what made you take the leap?
Well, formally, I believe that steroids make you train harder, to recover faster, so you can train harder and recovery. A lot of people think that should the steroids make you run fast? No, it was a gift, and I used the best way I can, and I beat the best.
All right, so by the late 80s, Ben, you had seen major success, including your win over rival. We remember this rivalry, Carl Lewis at the 1987 World Championships in Rome, and that started everything off. Everything started rolling in, from endorsements to multi-dollar contracts, and there's a chapter in the book called The Playboy. Tell us about that time and some of those stories about that time.
Well, I do believe after the 84 Olympic Games in Los Angeles, I finished third, and the Americans won 1, 2, and 3 in the 100 meters, and I didn't get that. But ever since then, I was on their radar to get me out. Winning that meet, kept me in third, winning the World Championship in a world record time. Everybody was stung about the time I set. And everyone said, this guy is probably using something. But, beating Americans, they're always saying that, they come after you if you're better than them. And that's what happened.
Yeah, if they win, it's fair. But if you win, it's cheating.
It's cheating,
Yeah. So let's fast forward to the Seoul Olympics, Mary, because you were on the scene when Ben won that 100-meter sprint. But then that race came to be known as, quote, the dirtiest race in history, because 6 of the 8 competitors were eventually linked to steroid use.
Right.
But I want to ask the question, why do you think it was only Ben who took all the heat?
It really does defy the odds, because in Seoul, a lot of track and field athletes were tested in 1988. Only one athlete tested positive, and that was Ben Johnson. And it may have started back with, you referred to in Rome, and there were rumors being spread largely by the American camp and Carl Lewis's entourage that Ben was using steroids and that he was cheating. So in many ways in Seoul, Ben was a very easy target. And if you believe that the Canadian officials surrounding the Olympic team were not going to go to the mat for him, which at the end of the day, they really didn't. They were also a soft target. So they were embarrassed, and Ben was easy pickings is kind of the way it turned out. But I will say, 36 years later, going into Paris, athletes are still using drugs. Even as we speak, athletes are still testing positive, and it's still a big crisis in the Olympic movement.
Absolutely. And I understand that, Ben, you were truly shocked at the positive test results and denied the doping claims for a very long time. Can you explain why you made that choice?
Well, I believe that, and I know that I was being ambushed, and I believe that the game wasn't being fair, and I just have to go along with it. I mean, I was a small fish in the ocean, you know, and that's what happened. When you're dealing with the big sponsorship and the big people like the IAF and IWF and everybody like that, you know, it gets really, really difficult at that point.
It felt also at the time like you were on your own. Like, did anybody come to your defense at that time?
Nobody, just my mother and Jesus Christ.
Interesting.
Wow. You know, Mary, you dug into key documents like Ben's original drug test from Seoul and material from the Royal Commission known as the Dubbin. Is that the Dubbin
Correct.
Inquiry?
Yes, correct.
What did you find when you went looking there?
Well, a litany of things, but number one was Ben's actual drug test and the supporting paperwork that was used in Seoul and wasn't really reviewed very hard back in 1988. We really didn't ask a lot of questions, and by we, I mean a lot of people, including media. So what we found, you know, decades later was it was a document full of unsigned, handwritten alterations. And by that, I mean, it was really deficient in so many ways. There were cross-outs of an athlete code, and Ben's code was written on top of it. There was a second drug on the paperwork, not the drug that Ben was actually dinged for at the end of the day. Doodles, calculations, question marks. So that document, you know, would have been challengeable in a hearing. But the really sad and egregious thing was when Ben was being defended by the Canadian officials in Seoul at that critical juncture, they didn't even look at the evidence against him. They didn't look at his drug test. They just believed the science was unassailable. And that was a very huge lost opportunity, one of many in Ben's story.
Well, you know, Ben, hindsight is always 20/20, as they say, right? So when you look back, do you have any regrets having used the steroids?
Well, I wouldn't say regret. I think this was my destiny. I think it was brought to my attention, and I say yes at the time, and it was the right thing to do at the time because all of my opponents were using it. If I have to do it over again, it's my true destiny. Yes, I will. But now and then, time goes by, you know, they use me as an example, as a scapegoat, to show the world that I was the only one using drugs, and everybody else doing everything what they normally do. And the same people are pointing fingers at me, they're the same people telling me I can't do that. So they want us as an athlete to follow the rules, but they don't follow the rules.
They weren't following the rules. Listen, Ben, Mary, thank you so much for stopping by. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
The world's fastest man is out now, so make sure you pick up a copy. And studio audience, guess what? You guys are going home. All right, everybody, stick around. We'll be right back. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Hey there, what did you think? Drop your comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can find more on everything from food and fashion to pop culture and current events. See you soon.